We are live. Shalom, covenant keepers and children of Israel. You're listening to Awaken to Torah Ministries, where spirit and truth converge. We are a listener-supported ministry and ask that you prayerfully consider supporting this work. This ministry is focused on revealing the message of Torah as taught by our Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. Your donation will be used to further a ministry devoted to exposing the lies that we have inherited from our forefathers, as Jeremiah 16:19 clearly declares. You can contact us at 77690 South 4680 Road, Stillwell, Oklahoma 74960, or join our mailing list at awakentotorah@gmail.com. We look forward to meeting you when we once again are sheltered by a cloud by day and a fire by night on our way to Jerusalem. Shalom Aleichem, and we'll see you there. Shalom, shalom, and welcome to the Tents of Israel, covenant keepers and children of Israel. I'm your host, James Gillespie. I got Mr. Ryan Knoll and Chris Jones on the other side of the screen here. Let's see if I can pull them on the screen. Hey, look at them shiny, beautiful faces. You guys are live 5x5 right now. Thanks for joining me tonight on the Tents of Israel. We've been away for a couple of weeks, and I've been missing you guys. Although Chris was with me for one of the, both of those weeks, I think. We were in Belize for one of them and Fifth Sabbath the next one. But yeah, the Father's been doing some great and mighty things, and he's just moving, and we're stepping in new doors in ministry and just doing whatever it is the Father's leading us to do. There are some crazy things going on in the world tonight, and we're going to talk about all of that here in a little bit. But you know, the Tents of Israel, it wouldn't be right if we didn't talk about things that were going on in the family first. The same way we do at Fifth Sabbath and things. I know that every once in a while we get stuck on this end time prophecy stuff and the craziness of what's going on in the world around us. That's the nature of it, and we are, if we were sitting around Bedouin tents on the hills of Judea, this is probably the conversations we would be having. You know, what's going on over in Jerusalem? I mean, that would be the conversations, because those things affect all of us in our daily life. But nothing so more as those intimate things that affect the family. Those things that are impacting our marriages and our children and our personal environments and our personal tents. And I'm going to read you an article that I wrote today here in a minute, and I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, but I wanted to kind of give you a little insight to what's going on in my mind, because from time to time I don't use social media very much, honestly. I know that people don't think that, but normally I get up in the morning, I pray, and if something hits me, I type that on Facebook. I leave it there for a while and wait until my phone blows up, and and then I'll come back in and make a comment or two, and then I'm back out again. I don't want social media to occupy my day. But in today's world, you have to stay engaged in social media uh, for anything. So it is reluctantly that I engage in social media at all. But today, the kids had a dentist appointment, and while we were waiting on the dentist to see them, I was just scrolling through Facebook. I hadn't even posted anything, I don't believe, but just scrolling through there, reading a bunch of friends' comments and seeing what everybody had to say concerning it. And I came across a post of a friend of mine. I'm not going to out her on the Tents of Israel because I don't want everybody bombarding her. But she was doing a fairly competent job of explaining submission, godly submission of a wife to a husband today, and I was so inspired by what she was doing. I did something that I normally never do. And those who know me know that I almost never comment on somebody else's thread. And it's not because I don't care what you have to say, because I read a lot of that stuff. I love to see what you have to say. It's because of my name and who I am. If I comment on your thread, I'm gonna blow your thread up because somebody's gonna come down hating on me, and it's gonna turn into this big old mess that I feel responsible for. So I just don't want to do that to you. Not that I don't care about you, not that I don't love you, and want to know what you're thinking and what you're hearing and what you're saying. But I got on there and got on this young lady's thread, her and her husband's thread. It's two people. They have their name together on there, like Floridel's page does. And I started to interject my thoughts into what it was that she was saying. And I wrote probably 2 or 3 paragraphs there and was going to post it, and then read back through it real quick and deleted it. Not that what I had to say wasn't going to help, her case, but because I didn't want to expose her to maybe some of the backlash from that. But after doing that all day long, it just kind of bugged me. And why can't we as men? And this is my question to you two men. Okay, so women can talk about submission from the time they get up to the time they go to bed, and everybody's like, yay for the women, yay. But if a man, any man, and especially this man, if I even say the word submission, the big grizzly bear comes out. Who are you to be talking about submission? That kind of bugs me. Since that one of the main verses that are used when talking about submission is the one that says, "Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord." So if submission of a wife is to be to her own husband, who more has the ability to define what submission should look like than the person who is being submitted to, and not the person who is supposed to be submitting? So that never quite made sense to me. What do you guys think about that as I pull this article up?
Go ahead, Ryan. Well, I mean,
Your lead on this one.
okay. Well, I definitely agree with the statement that it seems like if we do, as men, start talking about it, that you automatically get the walls start coming up if you're around women. And I guess it's safeguards that they've put in place to maybe they have in their mind oppressive or controlling men, seeking to use this submission to husbands in a negative way, which it obviously is done. But I mean, I think that we would have something to say as far as submission, because the requirements for us is to submit to Elohim himself. And then as the woman submits to the husband, she's submitting to Elohim also. Now, granted, we're not as perfect as he is. I understand that. But it still doesn't negate the fact that the submission is still a mutual submission, that we're submitting and they're submitting as well. So then does that beg the question that they're only to submit as much as we submit to the Father? Well, I don't think that their performance is contingent upon our performance either. So that they should submit fully in the command that they've been commanded to do, as well as us, even though we may have some shortcomings in that area. But no, I don't know. I think that maybe it's just, in our society especially, it seems to be a touchy subject because, whether our women like it or not, I mean, they realize that feminism is a strong doctrine and that it's everywhere you look in this country and that it is anti-scriptural. And that it's so ingrained in them, even in a household like mine, that we openly combat feminism. I mean, my wife's against it, but she understands the deep hooks that it still has within her, and you can see it in my daughters. I mean, it's just our society's so inundated with it on every level that you don't even realize the teaching is there when it's there. I mean, it's a subtle, sneaky, satanic doctrine. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah. Well, the westernization of our women, that Western mindset of probably the last 100 years or so, of there is no difference between a man and a woman. No, there are clearly differences between a man and a woman. Okay, clearly differences between a man and a woman. I hope that I don't have to sit here and explain those differences either on an emotional or physical level. Okay, there are clearly differences between us. But one is not weaker than the other. That's the crazy thing. Even though Scripture does depict the woman as the weaker vessel, that doesn't necessarily mean that she is weak. Okay, so her body, her physical stature, clearly that's a weaker vessel. Don't believe me? Put I don't know, Conan the Barbarian and I don't know, some feminine woman, some little woman, I don't know who that would be. Put them in a ring together and let them go at it and see how fast the woman lasts. Okay, so she's clearly going to be the weaker vessel in the physical sense. But spiritually, when we start looking at the strength of a woman, and especially the strength of a woman in a man's life, oh my goodness, it is amazing. And I know the westernization of women is trying to take that away from them. It's trying to put them on the same, give the woman every weakness of the man and nullify her every strength. Okay? So I make this statement when we talk about feminism and masculinity. If you take a woman and you take a man out of her life, she has to become more masculine to survive. Okay? That's just a fact. I'm not trying to be a male chauvinist or anything else. If you put a woman out in the middle of the woods and you take away a man out of her life, she has to become more masculine to survive. That's just a straight fact. Okay? But if you do the same thing for a man, you put a man out in the wilderness and you take away a woman, he doesn't have to become more feminine to survive. That's a fact. He has to become maybe even a little bit more masculine to survive. Okay? Because he has to even overcompensate for himself. All right. So the survival of the fittest is masculinity. So why, when we talk about masculinity, do we always talk about masculinity in a negative sense? It's toxic masculinity. It's men wanting to rule the world. Well, buck up, Buttercup, because this is going to be a bumpy ride for you tonight. I know that makes a lot of women uncomfortable, But I want you to know first and foremost before we really start getting into this, because I'm gonna read this article. It won't take me but about 4 or 5 minutes to do so. Pretty short article. To further reveal to you my heart on this matter. But I will tell you that this man Chris and this man Ryan, I've watched their lives with their wives. They don't control their wives. They don't dominate and force their wives. Their wives submit to them because they are trying to the best of their ability to submit to God. And now that their wives are becoming to understand submission, they're not even doing it because of their husbands or for their husbands. They're doing it for God, which is the original intent of submission in the first place. So when we start seeing that beautiful picture that Elohim created there, it is an amazing, amazing thing. So if you guys don't mind, Ryan, you got anything to say before I read this article on that?
Well, I mean, the only thing I was just going to add is, when you've been married to your spouse for a long time and you have a dynamic. I mean, you can't just rule over her.
No.
You
Try it for a minute.
There's ground rules. Got ground rules, and sometimes you do step over those boundaries at times, but there's give and take. Sometimes they do need that reassurance and those boundaries, and sometimes they don't. But you can't just rule over her with an iron fist and expect that marriage to last.
Yeah, that's control, and God doesn't deal in control, and neither should His people. We should never try to control the mind, will, or emotions of another human being. That's my stance. So I want every woman listening to that or to this broadcast tonight to know that everything I say from this point on will be going along those lines. We do not have the right or the ability to control somebody's mind, will, or emotion. All right? Control is not of Elohim. And that's not what we're talking about when we use the word submission. Neither one of us three guys, okay? So I want to assure you of that first and foremost. But I'm going to jump in and read this article here. I probably made some typos. I haven't proofread it or posted it yet because I got some people that are trying to help me out a little bit with my editing, because those who really know me know I can't spell. and my punctuation is atrocious. So it's crazy that I'm a writer and an accomplished author and can't really spell. I mean, I can write, but if it wasn't for spell check, I would be in some real trouble. So here we go. The title of the article that I'll be posted later after the Tents of Israel is called "Wives, Submit Yourselves to Your Own Husbands." Okay, most men who want to talk about submissions forget that word "own." Okay, that word "own" means possession. Your wives should only be submitted to you, and any man who tries to subvert your authority over your wife probably needs a punch in the nose. That's just my opinion. So. I hope that we would never do that. You guys are still on the screen with me, by the way. So I hope that most people would never try to overstep another man's authority concerning his wife. But I'm going to jump over to this screen here, and I'm going to get all three of us off of here, so you can just read along with this article with me. It says, "Wives, submit yourself unto your own husbands." Ephesians 5:22. "Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord." And earlier when I made this post on Facebook about the act of submission, a good friend of ours and his wife, Daniel and Ariana, made a comment about verse 21, where it says basically, submitting yourselves one to another. But if we look at this passage of scripture here and just read that whole chapter of Ephesians 5, the first part of that chapter is showing us how to together serve God. Okay, when we get to verse 22, it separates that, and now it shows us how we are to submit ourselves to our why our wives are supposed to submit themselves to us, and we're supposed to submit ourselves to the fathers. So read that whole chapter, even though I only put out one verse here that says, wives, submit yourself to your own husband as unto the Lord, okay, or unto the sovereign. So I'll just jump in and just read, and when I get done, we'll come back and see if we have something to say further on this matter. One more thing before I know I keep doing the one more thing, and I hate that, but I'm going to do it to you one more time. Okay, but one more thing. When I posted this article in our private group, I asked the women of our group to read it, and if they had anything to add to it, to please don't hesitate and add that. So when you see the final copy of this, it may not read exactly like I'm reading it right now, okay? Because we have other people looking at it, and we want our wives' perspectives on this as well, okay? So I don't want it to just be the man said this is what submission is, and that's what it has to be. That's not what we're doing here, okay? So our women have a voice as well. Okay, so it has been several months since I've written an article of any kind. I've just been busy. I really was not intending on writing an article today either, as again, I am just too busy, or so I thought. I had an appointment today for my children, and while I was waiting, I was scrolling social media, writing and erasing comments before I post them on other people's threads, as I always do. But some of their topics are oh so inviting. And intellectually, I want to insert myself into the mix. But I think about how I feel when someone comes onto one of my threads trying to further the conversation, but rather insert their agenda alongside in opposition to my original statements. So I think better of doing that to others and remove my comment and start my own thread rather than disrupting theirs. One such instance was a thread today when a woman was talking to other women about being submitted to their husbands. She was doing this while taking a very uncommon stance that nowhere in scripture does it say that she is to submit only if her husband is fully submitted to Elohim. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for just a minute and kind of elaborate on that. The woman was making that crucial point, that the Bible doesn't demand that a woman submit to her husband if he is submitted to Elohim. That's nowhere in the scriptures. But that is the excuse that most women who are refusing to submit to their husband use. Well, my husband's not doing what he's supposed to do for God, so you're telling me I have to submit to an unsubmitted man? Here's the thing, and I'll make that clear in this article as we go. It is a commandment for a man to love his wife as the Messiah loved the church. Okay? It is also a separate command for a woman to submit herself unto her husband as unto the Lord. Okay? Those two commandments are not contingent upon each other. Okay? So men, you can't blame your wife if she's not submitted to you. Well, I would serve God better if my wife would just be submitted. That's a cop-out. Okay? Forget about it. It's a cop-out. That commandment for you to love your wife has no bearing on whether she's submitted to you or not. You're to love her no matter what. Okay? You took her as your wife. That's the one you chose. Now do what you're commanded to do and love her. Okay? Now, women, let's flip on the other side of that. The commandment for you to submit yourself unto your husband is not contingent upon him loving you like the Messiah loved the church. Okay? It's a commandment from Elohim for you to submit yourself to your husband no matter what. It's a separate commandment. The two are not intertwined with each other. Okay? So let's make that clear before we go on any further. I had written a semi-lengthy comment. I've already told this story, so I'm not going to tell that. I'm going to jump down to the next paragraph. Okay? So after deleting it, though, the topic that I have literally traveled the country for many years teaching on would not leave my mind. Biblical submission is very much a large part of covenant relationship, and that message alone is the one for the last 30 years that I have been asked to speak on more than any other. The problem is that when a man, any man, especially this man, says the words wife and submission in the same sentence, there is going to be a fight. It is not even a question. The modern woman has mentally beaten most men into ungodly submission. That if he dares to have an opinion on marital submission, he must be an abuser that wants to control his wife or dominate her until she cannot be herself, thereby forcing her into submission. I have counseled literally hundreds of marriages, and with the wisdom that the Father has given me on this topic, everyone who has ever followed the biblical prescription laid out for a marriage has been saved. Now, there have been some others over the years that ended in divorce, but it was because one part or the other part, maybe both, were not fully willing to look at themselves with the critical eye when it came to their sin against their spouse inside their marriage. Now, there's where we have to start looking. Our sins against each other. We forget about our sins to God. If we're looking at this covenant relationship of a husband and a wife, the sins that we commit against each other, holding past wrongs against our spouse. If our wife did something wrong and we're holding that against her for the next 15 years or vice versa, we always crack jokes about women going back to the Neanderthal period and digging up some bones back there and throwing them up in our face. But we have to get to that place that we don't hold past wrongs against each other, and that's one of the biblical lessons about submission. I know right away that brings to the mind of most people adultery and pornography and abuse in most people's minds. When I mention sins against their spouse in a marriage, those are obvious, but most of those sins do not begin with that sin. It begins with the violation of two things. Number one, the husband is not loving his wife like the Messiah loved the assembly. He loved the assembly so much he corrected them daily for their sins against him and his word. He loved them so much that he cared far more for their soul than their approval. And only after he had given them correction did he pull them to himself and show them how deep his love is, that he would lay down his life for someone who had in many ways set their face in opposition against him. The number two reason is that the wife is unruly, usurping the leadership authority of her husband and refusing to submit to him. That's the main two reasons for a marriage in crisis that I've dealt with over the past 30 years. Okay, while 90% of the time my covenant teaching is directed at the failure of the husband to lead according to the Torah, this topic of submission for the purpose of this article is directed solely at the woman. And right there, I heard 1,000 Western mentality-minded, controlled women gasp, "How dare he? Ha ha ha." I would tell you the reason 98% of known teachers will not teach this topic is because they are afraid. They're afraid to simply declare what the scriptures have already declared for fear of being labeled a male chauvinist, controlling, mentally abusive, or any of the other labels women choose to paint them with. Before we get into exactly what the scriptures say concerning submission, though, I want to make 2 points. One, I'm a Jewish rabbi. When I married my wife, she was a practicing Catholic. She will tell you the story. If you ask, I'm sure. I almost did not marry her because of the differences in our faith and the struggles I had seen that caused many other marriages in my life of marriage counseling. I confessed to my wife that I did not love her with the emotional love feeling before we agreed to be married. But I did understand commitment. And if she too understood commitment, that we could be married more in a contractual type marriage than an emotional driven one. We both agreed, and after many months of discussing the commitment that we were entering into with each other, we drew up a ketubah and became married. One of the questions she asked was, would I force her to change her religion? My reply was, how could I force anyone to believe or not believe in something they did or did not believe in? And that she was free to believe whatever it was she wanted to, as long as it did not involve witchcraft. I also informed her that my home was a kosher home and that it would remain so, including food, and that she would not be allowed to bring abominable foods into the home. Other than telling her that I was the head of my home and that I would not be struggling against her, but alongside of her to build a family, and that while her word was greatly needed, that my word would be the final. That is the rule, the only rule I set. Within 6 months of being married to her, she started making comments about what it was that I believed to her friends. Within a year, she started making comments about what it was that we believed as a family. And within 2 years, she was openly expressing her own faith in Yeshua and helping to hold even me accountable to the Torah. The other day, after returning from Fifth Sabbath, we were laying in the bed in the afternoon just relaxing, and she turned to me and said, I hear you say all the time that every marriage has its own problems. And I've been thinking for over an hour now about something I could identify in our marriage that is a problem, that I could start praying about, and I can't think of one. Could you help me think of one? I'm going to stop right there for just a minute. Those who know my wife, Floridel, she's Filipino, and she speaks 6 languages, or 7 languages if you count English, but her English isn't the greatest. It's good enough to communicate, but our communication is lacking because of a language barrier. Not because we don't want to communicate, but because of a language barrier sometimes. So that was the problem that I gave her. Because honestly, after sitting there praying about it and thinking about it myself, that's the only thing I could come up with. And I want to tell you, that's not because of James and because I'm such a great guy and understand marriage better than anybody in the world. It's because of this woman, and you'll see why here in just a minute. Okay, I'm going to continue with the article. I have never asked Queen Floridel to submit to me. I've never forced her to believe anything that she did not come to believe on her own by just presenting an alternate information. She does what she wants. She goes where she wants to go. The crazy thing is 90% of the time I have to make her go do something for herself because she wants to be with me doing literally everything. And if it's something I won't feel comfortable doing, she would rather miss out on that fun than miss out on the time we spend together. I write this article telling you from the jump that my wife is submitted. The love we now share is deeper than the love, that I could ever explain to you with the mere words of mortal men. The respect I have for this woman surprises even me. I have never met another person in my life with a bigger heart to serve in any capacity as she can. It is her ability to submit to an imperfect man that hasn't caused, it is her ability to submit to an imperfect man that has caused me to love her more deeply than my own life. I do not love her as I love myself. My first thought or concern is always of her before myself. To use a cliche line, it is she that makes me want to be a better man, not only for her, but for Elohim. I am incomplete without her, and this is the only lesson a wife is ever supposed to teach her husband. But she cannot teach it with her words. She must teach it with her actions. I pray that every man can experience this. If it is gained through control, it is not truly biblical submission. It is gained through force, it is not godly submission. If it is gained through guilt, coercion, or any other means that is not freely given, then it is not godly submission. A woman submitting to her husband in everything is what teaches him how to submit to God in a real way. and not being forced to keep his commandments, but desiring to. Women, this is how you get the love that will heal every past hurt, every scar on your heart placed there by someone who tried to destroy you. When you relinquish control of your life into the hands of another solely to do as they please, this is the picture of what the Father is requiring of us, his people. And a woman is uniquely situated to be the only physical picture that a man may ever see. Elohim's judgment to the woman was also his blessing. So let's take a look at that. Genesis 3:16. To the woman he said, I will greatly increase your pain in childbirth. You will bring forth children in pain. Your desire will be towards your husband, but he will rule over you. Okay, that's the complete Jewish Bible. I know normally I use King James Version. I don't know why I put the complete Jewish Bible up there on that one, but I did. So that's what we're going to use. But I wanted to make the reference here in the article that says that word rule right there in the Hebrew is mishal, a primitive root to rule, to have, to make or to have, dominion, to govern, indeed to reign, to bear, to cause, to have, to rule, to be ruling or to rule over, and have power over. Okay, so that word rule literally means to rule, to have power and have possession or dominion over her. Okay, so, but let's look at that. By a woman not submitting to her own husband, she is working open rebellion against Yahweh by refusing to accept that his judgment was righteous. Now, I know that's hard to hear, but as you read it, you knew it was the true statement because at least part of the judgment was that she would become the man's possession to have and to rule over. When the woman finally sees that the only way to truly escape the negative side of having someone rule over you is to submit to that rule, she has truly embraced Elohim's judgment on her and now has truly fulfilled the mitzvah, or the commandment. Blessed are those who keep his commands and do his judgments. A woman submitting to her husband or father is her truly submitting to Yahweh. It is her very first act of obedience to the Heavenly Father. Okay, I want to make that clear. Submitting to your father or whoever is your covering, to your father or to your husband, that is your very first act as a woman of biblical obedience to our Heavenly Father. Okay, because that was the first curse he gave you. I know that may be hard for some to hear, but I did not write these words or establish these judgments. I am only stating what they clearly say. A woman who vows a vow, even if that vow was made to Yahweh, if in the day her husband or father hears that vow, he decides to nullify it, then Yahweh himself will not override the authority over the man concerning his wife or his daughter. So a woman who does not have the approval of her husband can not enter into any vow, even with Elohim. Now let that sink in. I could explore that statement alone until literally every woman who ever reads this article would hate and despise me until they truly saw Elohim's understanding concerning submission. I'll make this final statement. Man did and continues to lose his life because he loves his bride so much. Adam did not have to eat of the tree. He did that because he loved Eve. Man does not have to be the covering for anyone but himself, but he chooses to be judged for not only his own vows, but for the vows of anyone under his covering that he does not nullify in the day that he hears them. This is the Torah. I hope this at least gives you a little different perspective on biblical covering and the wife submitting to her husband. but understand that his submitting to the Father in obedience has nothing to do with whether you submit to him or not. They are separate judgments and separate commands. One is not contingent upon the other. So in the word of the girls from Fiddler on the Roof, you better be careful, because if you marry the wrong man, your goose could be cooked. But sadly, most men and women don't seek Elohim in their potential mate. They seek the lust of their flesh and someone who they believe they will reflect good on and who will reflect good on them, when in actuality, the real Prince Charming may be the one who looks like a frog. Blessings. So, gentlemen, that's the article I wrote. I'm going to jump back over here to the cam with you guys. Anything stick out to you in there that we need to explore a little bit further?
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this night's Tense of Israel. I think it's all been said. We'll talk to y'all later. Oh yeah, man, there's a lot. Me and my wife and one of my daughters, at least today, was talking about this, and we actually talked about this Numbers 30 that you just went over in your article last night. We were having this discussion. And I mean, one thing that stuck out to me tonight after reading through it is that it's just a sober reminder of the vows that we approve or don't nullify. Is that in verse 15 it says, "Then he shall bear her crookedness."
Absolutely.
If the wife or daughter doesn't go through with the vow that they have made to the father. In that, it seems maybe if you're looking at it from a feministic standpoint, it's like, oh, well, here we go again. A man just gets to control even the vows that I'm trying to make to God. But to really realize and to see the gravity of that statement in verse 15 is that, you're not making a vow as an island, as a wife or a daughter, but that your covering has to bear the crookedness.
You're making it for the whole family.
It does. That's what I'm saying, but it doesn't say that they bear the crookedness. Now the covering of that household, he bears the crookedness. Obviously, there's going to be a trickle down effect, but that crookedness is on us. So, I mean, to me, that seems like the better position to be in, the position of the wife. As far as, hey, what do you think, husband? Is this vow good for me to make? Yes or no? And if she can't, then you haven't sinned, because the scripture says it's better to have not vowed. And this is one thing we covered last night, than to make a vow and break it. And that's the seriousness of the vows that we make to the Father. We might forget them, but he doesn't. I firmly believe they're written down in the heavens and are confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses that have heard our voice. So yeah, I mean, it's heavy stuff, man. It really is. I did have a question. Actually, my daughter had a question, and I was going to ask you, but we'll ask her here. I think I'm going to know the answer, but Hannah said, okay, what if she makes a vow to God right now, and I approve it, because we talk about this. Y'all don't make any without me. Y'all come and talk, and we'll see if it's okay. But then when she gets married, and I think I know the answer, I'm just checking. Does that vow become nullified by her husband, or does she need to now tell the husband of the vow that she made when she was under my covering?
I believe it seems, according to my current understanding, which is, all of us as men is subject to change the more the Father enlightens the Torah to us. But my current understanding in that is that when the transference of covering happens, that the daughter basically gets a new slate, because her husband is not bound by any vow that the father was bound by. And any vow that wasn't completed while the daughter was in the father's house would now be nullified, since she's no longer under his covering.
Yeah, that's kind of the conclusion we came up to. And if she had made a long-term vow, lifetime vow with the father, that she needed to go ahead and tell her husband of that vow.
Sure, before they enter to
approve of it.
Absolutely. So if she vowed, she was never going to cut her hair her whole life. And she made that vow to Elohim. And she's about to get married and enter into a ketubah with the husband. I think that would be a great thing for the husband and the father to talk about. Well, when Hannah was 13 years old, she made a vow to the father that she would never cut her hair her whole life. Will you stand good for that vow as the covering transfers from me to you? And if he doesn't nullify that vow in that day, then that vow would be able to stand. But if he was a wise and prudent man and not trying to just to snooker you out of your daughter, he would probably say, no, I'm not. I don't know what the future is going to hold for me and your daughter, so I'm not going to uphold any vow she made while she's in your house. And that to me would be an honest young man and not somebody who was just trying to get my approval.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that'd be one with foresight for sure to say he doesn't know the circumstances and what's going to go down. But yeah,
Ryan, you've only had one daughter, so so what would be your understanding on that?
Yeah, my understanding would be, I'm going to say the slate is wiped clean because she's changing. She's basically moving out of her family into his family.
Well,
I would say that the law gets rewrote, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I know that us three are probably agreeing on that. We hope that the Father agrees with us as well. I don't think that those are light words that we're saying there. I think that all three of us have put some real genuine thought into that concept, because I know that I personally take vows very seriously. I know that the two men on the other side of the screen as well, they take vows very, very seriously. I have 2 daughters and 2 sons, and Chris has 27 and Ryan has 1. no, Chris has 6 girls and 3 boys. So oh my goodness, I can't imagine. 6 girls. The 2 I have, I tell people that girls are the worst. They just are. Because as a dad, for 16, 18, 20, 25 years, you just pour your whole life into this beautiful creature that God has given you, and you're molding her and you're making her into this perfect woman, and then she goes and betrays you for another man. I don't know what to do with all that. Because you just have to release her. I mean, absolutely release her with no say, with no commitment. Once you put her hand in the hand of another man, you're done. You have no more right to interject into her life, because if you start to try to usurp the authority of her husband, then you're going to bring a curse upon the rest of your house. So we have to be very, very careful, and that's why we have to be diligent. I mean, our wives, number one, because they're the teachers of our children. They are the protector of our relationship with our kids as well. That's why in a Jewish home, I know that this American mentality doesn't compute with most people, but in a Jewish home, the woman is actually the most important thing in that home. And every man understands that. Because me as a man, I have to go out 8 to 16 hours a day and make a living. And while I'm gone, who is there protecting my relationship with my kids? It's her. She's got to be there protecting my relationship and building my relationship in my absence with my children. So I better be treating her right, so she ain't bad mouthing me behind my back to my kids. I mean, one of the worst things I think a mother can ever say to her kids is, "You wait till your dad gets home." I mean, you're painting him as the monster. I'm going to be the good guy, he's going to be the bad guy. We don't need a good cop, a bad cop in a family. We just need a family to work. And that the amazing thing about the way the Father has established this family is when we do work it according to the Torah, it works. I mean, it genuinely works. It's when we step outside that covering of the Torah and we start, following after our own flesh and our own will and our own desires and those little fears that we all have. Well, I need to control the situation. I'm going to tell you, you can be the most controlling person in the whole world. And if somebody wants to do something outside your control, you can't stop them. You may prevent them for a minute, but you can't stop them. So why are you allowing yourself to become so distraught trying to micromanage every aspect of everything in your wives' lives and your children's life? Okay, just love them, teach them the Torah, discipline with them when they need it, but don't over discipline and don't control. Control is not of God. He doesn't control us. Why should we control somebody else? The whole picture of our life should exemplify his relationship with us. Okay, so if he doesn't control us, why should we control our wives? Why should we control our children? We don't control them. We instruct them. We teach them. We tell them what the blessings are and what the curses are. We tell them what the blessings are and what the punishments are. And then we hold them to those things. Okay, that's the best we can do. And if we do that, I feel like that we have been successful in our parenting, successful in our husbandry, and the Father will bless us at the end of this life.
Agreed.
You guys further that.
Well, I was, just thinking again on further the conversations that we were having in the kitchen earlier. It was after me and you had talked, and in the line of thinking when it comes to submission, I mean, we can say that, okay, the wife's submission is not contingent on the man's submission to Elohim or the way that he treats her. True. But man, it sure is a lot easier to submit to a man who's submitted to Elohim and who's
100%
as Messiah loves. So, the theme today was, or the quote was, girls, the number one, most spiritual thing that you can do and most important decision that you're going to make is going to be the man that you marry. And of course I said, well, hey, just let me pick him for you. He'll be But no, I mean, and we've taught them from a young age that, hey, we really need to have a big input, and you guys need to be open and prepare your minds to allow us to discern, as well as you prayerfully discern the man that you're going to choose to marry. Because, I mean, all joking aside, I really do believe that it's the number one most important decision that a woman can make. And even a man in this instance, but a woman especially, them being the weaker vessel. And if you pick a man who has that abusive nature or who has those addictive personalities and who is not fully submitted to Elohim because he was able to put that snake oil on you and tell you everything you wanted to hear, and then as soon as you're married, flips a switch. I mean, you've got to allow, prayerful discernment to lead you in that, because man, you're bound by it for life. I mean, you get in there and you're married to this husband and you become his, and I don't have any spiritual authority over that anymore as your father. So, and the boys are the same way. I mean, it's, you better choose wisely, because if you choose a woman who is going to be constantly at you and not submitted to the Father or submitted to you, it could be a long day. Every day. So, yeah, those are some good conversations. And I mean, I'd say to all the parents listening, we got to have these conversations when they're young. We got to have them today. I mean, if you didn't have them, they're 18 now and they're already looking to get married. Today's the day that we start having these conversations and getting serious about, the ultimate goal of us, getting married and continuing doing the mitzvah, being fruitful and multiplying and raising up young men and women for the kingdom, because it's at hand.
Mr. Ryan there, he's almost reverse of you. He's got 5 boys and 1 girl.
Yeah.
He needs a couple more girls, and another boy, and he'll just reverse you. But we've been talking about girls and wives here a little bit, but it is equally important to instruct our sons. I mean, number one, we as fathers need to absolutely stay 100% pressure engaged in our sons' lives.
Yes.
And I know that right there freaked somebody out when I said pressure engaged. Okay. Boys are made men through pressure. That's just a straight fact. Okay. The more pressure you put on them, the stronger they're going to become. The more they're going to define who they are. Okay. And we as Torah observant men need to pour the pressure on our sons that when they do leave our house, they will be a good husband. They will love their wives like the Messiah loved the ecclesia or the church. That's you said something, Chris, that it's a whole lot easier to be submitted to a man who is submitted to God. That's a given. I mean, that's absolute given. And when we look at that whole portion of scripture where it talks about 7 women taking hold of one man saying, we'll buy our own clothes, we'll eat our own food, we'll basically take care of every need that we personally have on our own. You don't have to worry about providing for our needs. Just let us be called by your name. At some point in the future, women are going to begin, especially Israeli, the women of Israel, are going to start realizing how important a biblical covering is, and the covering of a man. When that picture truly comes into view, that's when this prophecy of 7 women taking a hold of one man will absolutely be played out. And if you read that scripture, the men were refusing to be their covering because they didn't want the responsibility. And these women were basically begging, just let me be called by your name in that prophecy, because that's how important a covering is. But we don't teach covering because of the society that we live in. Back in the 1930s and 40s, the women's liberation movement got a good, strong foothold in the United States, and it's destroyed our women. It's trying to make our women into men. Here's the thing. Call me a male chauvinist if you want. I want to be a traditional man. I want to go out, work, hunt, fish, gather, provide for my family. That's what makes me feel like a man. Okay. I want my wife to be a traditional wife that while I'm away hunting and gathering, she is taking care of my home, taking care of my children, protecting my reputation, singing my praises in the city. And when she does go into the city, the other men of the city are envious of this beautiful, diligent Proverbs 31 wife that has chosen me. That's my ideal picture of this traditional marriage. And when we tell women you're less than if you want that same picture, there's something wrong in your head. If you tell a woman that she is being cheated out of something in life because she wants to have 25 kids and stay home and raise them and be a good mother to them, as long as she's capable of doing that, who are you? Who are you to even have a negative thought about her? Okay? I say that woman is to be commended. If those children are clean, healthy, happy, and fed, it's none of your business. And even if they aren't, it's none of your business. Unless they're being abused, stay out of it. It's not part of your covenant. So, but our society has reversed that role. And we've taught women that it's irresponsible to have more than 2 children. If you have 4, you're verging on or absolute derelict, and more than that, you're just a scourge on society. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the mentality that's running through our society right now. When my Bible says that it is the blessing of Elohim that me as a man, my quiver will be full. And I don't want just 13 arrows. I want 24.
Yeah.
I want a full quiver. That baker's dozen just don't work for me. I'm probably done having children at this point in my life, but I have 2 sons and 2 daughters. Ryan and Chris both beat me in that field, but I'm still practicing. So we'll see.
Got to keep practicing.
If the Father provides, we will have a dozen more. I wish our society made it a lot easier for us to adopt children that are being abused and do need somebody to love them and to care for them. But I have this aversion of inviting the government into my life just so I can love a child and care for them and take care of them. When I've been doing that for 4 other children for, now 25 years, I could probably do it for a few more for the next 25 years. But to do that, I'd have to let the government step into my life. And as you've probably realized by watching The Tents of Israel, I'm not too governmental friendly. so the least they can be involved in my life, the better. I like that. That's the way I try to live that. I don't want to meddle in their life, and I don't want them to meddle in mine. Let's just leave each other alone and call it a wash. Ryan, you got anything on this?
Yeah. You know what? My hat's off to the women. I mean, the women have had to step up.
100%.
Society, the men have dealt the women a bad blow. Men can get off. They can exit relationships. They can blame it on their wives. They can, but a lot of men are traditionally not masculine anymore. I mean, we've got, we've got hormone changes, we've got food additives, we've got video games, we've got things that are taking the man, they're taking the man out of the man. I mean, it's just a situation where, if he doesn't step up, the woman has to. And she's going to take care of business, whether you're going to or not. She's going to take care of her kids. She's going to provide, whether you do it or not. And as a society, the man has just that we're failing. We're failing these women. And so, these women that are taking, stepping up and taking care of the families and raising the kids. I mean, they need to be praised from it, but they're also raising men. They're raising their boys, not to be men. It's not their fault because they're doing the best job that they can. It's the head. It's the men. It's the head of the house's fault that the society, the breakdown of the society, is. It's the man's fault because he's not taking care of business.
Okay, so we have a few comments in the chat here. I'm gonna read those real quick, and we'll see if us 3 big bad men can put our heads together and answer our wives, because some of our women are in the chat room right now asking questions. So I'm gonna pick out a few of them. Okay, Chris's wife, Miss Robin, is in the chat room. Miss Mahala Force, which is the women's pastor at Bet Hillel, she's in the chat room. And we have Miss Francine Solis, David Hooven, which I'm sure Mrs. Hooven is there with him as well. So Mahala says 1 of 2. Okay, so this is question 1 of 2. When the husband is not submitted to the father, the family receives judgment, right? Okay, that's a question mark. When the wife isn't submitted to her husband, the family also receives judgment, right? Okay, so let's answer those two questions first. So I would say 100%. You guys?
100%. Yeah, I would have to echo that 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's a 100% solid answer from all three of us, that we are in 100% agreement that if the husband is not submitted to the father, then the whole family receives judgment. And when the wife isn't submitted to her husband, again, the whole family receives judgment. Okay, and I'll go a little bit further, and it's because, I mean, if you've ever heard me teach about covenant relationship, 90% of that teaching is throwing the responsibility off onto the husband. So I would say 100% that it is because the husband is not doing his job. He's not loving her as Messiah. Now, there's always the exception to the rule. Okay, so I know we make these blanket statements, but I always want to qualify that by saying there's always the exception to the rule. But the majority of the time that there is a deficiency in the home, it's not because of the wife. It's because of the husband's inability to biblically lead that home. Okay, that's just a fact, man. And I'm sorry I have to put that pressure on you, but I didn't put it there. Yahweh did. Okay, it's just what it is. Okay, so part 2 of her question, it says 2 of 2. How do you know which your family is receiving? Okay, so are we if the husband is not submitted to the father fully as he is supposed to, then the woman, even though she may be submitted, she can't be fully submitted to him, right? Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Okay, all right. So if the husband is not submitted to the father properly, so I'm just trying to think of scenarios. All right. So if we look at the wife and her role in the marriage and the husband's role in the marriage, the wife, she's considered the helpmeet or the ezer kenegdo, the one who came from us, but yet as we come in marriage, they come back to us into our side to elevate us to our proper position so that we can actually reach that higher level that we need to reach as men to commune with the Father, which therefore opens the blessing or the shefa from above, that abundance, and that would go into the entire family properly. So the way I see it, if any part of our submission to Messiah to the Father, and our wife to us, and the children up under our covering, if any part of that equation has a hole in it, then now we're leaking the blessings that the Father is seeking to give us, and now experiencing judgments from our disobedience, from whatever place in the chain that has become deficient, which would either be the husband or the wife, so that they're not bringing the synergy of the family into to the place it's supposed to be. It seems from my experience, when dealing with the job that I've been doing for 20 years, the number one most common thing that I've found, just from my own, 95% of all statistics are made up. So, my 90+% statistic that I'm going with here is pretty accurate, but I don't have the perfect metric, is that the juveniles that I deal with don't have a father in their life. So whether he's dead, just estranged, or in prison, they're not there. I mean, the majority of them, I don't even like having to ask them what their father's name is, because you immediately see the pain, you immediately see the anger, you immediately see the suffering that they're going through because the father's not been present. So I would say that is definitely a judgment right there that the father brings on the family by not being submitted to Elohim and not loving his wife like he's supposed to, and therefore bringing up children Deuteronomy 6:4, teaching them the ways of the Torah. So that's the way I see that. And when it comes to, I don't really know how to, as far as how the wife's not submitting to the husband, I don't know what judgments, if that's even what your question is. Like, I guess it is the part, how do you know which your family's receiving? I don't know how to necessarily differentiate.
I do it this way. So before me and Floridel got married, which Miss Floridel, she never does any wrong. I just want to throw that out there. I'm just playing. My wife's better than your wife.
I'm taking notes. We're gonna have to get in an argument.
I know. I always those who know me know that I joke around about that all the time. I go around to all the men and whisper in their ears, or I say it out loudly. I got the prettiest wife in the room. And the crazy thing is I want every man to respond with the same thing. No, you don't. I do. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Because you should be thinking your wife is that hot mama you married, however many years ago. So, anyways, the way that I judge that, because I know how the Father judges me. Okay, before I got married, I can go back and genuflect on how he judged me prior to marriage, and normally the way he always got my attention was that he would start messing with my finances a little bit, because he knew I'd be like an old gopher. My money starts going down, my head will come up out of the hole and go, okay, what's going on? so he would start touching my finances a little. And I would get real serious about finding out how I was failing. So now, if there's a different judgment that's coming into my life, I start looking. Okay, is this me? And if I find that it's not me, then I start looking out through my family. And it may not be my wife that it's even coming through. It may be coming through my children. My children may be doing something that I'm neglecting to notice in my family, and the Father's just trying to get my attention and point me like a bird dog. Okay, you need to be paying attention to this, because this son needs some direction in his life here. This daughter needs some direction in their life there. Quit trying to be the good guy and be the parent. I mean, I don't know any of us that wouldn't want to be our children's friend. But we're first called to be their parent. Okay, if I love my wife, like I wrote in the article, if I love my wife like the Messiah loves the ecclesia, or he loved the assembly, the first thing he did to the assembly was correct them. And after they had submitted to his correction, then he loved them up. Okay, repent and go and sin no more. So I would say to the wife that is trying to figure out where the judgment's coming from, whether it's coming from her husband not being submitted or her not being able to be fully submitted to him, that's a hard thing. But you are going to have to look at, how does the Father judge you personally? And then if you find that it's something that you're not doing, start looking through your spouse, and then look to your children and see where that's coming from. Because we as believers, number one, we as believers belong to God. Okay? And the only way judgment comes into our life is because we've done something wrong, or he's testing us. So we need to figure out which one of those two it is. And if it's judgment, we need to find out where that judgment's coming from. Okay? So that's how we narrow these things down, so we can figure out it's problem solving. That's why God made men logical. Oh, I'm gonna get killed for that one. We're just natural born problem solvers. But the crazy thing is most women don't want a problem solver. They want a problem listener. Okay? And we as men need to be a little bit better about that. They don't want you to solve every problem for them. They just want you to listen and share with them in the struggle sometimes. And sometimes that's a hard thing for the man to do when he knows, well, all I have to do is A, B, and C, and this problem's over with. Why are we even talking about it? But they don't want you to do that. They want you to share in the struggle with them. So get in there and struggle with them and not against them. That's your one messianic marriage lesson for today. Don't struggle against them, struggle with them. Anything else on that, guys?
Well, I was just thinking too. I mean, let's not always think in judgments as negative either. I mean, because we should be praying that that He judge us. Search me out and judge me. I mean, try me that way that I can know if there's some sin within me that I need to get out, and help us to recognize the difference between the judgments that the Father's making on us because we want to be more set apart and we want to live the way He wants us to live, as opposed to thinking that judgments are something of a negative take. I don't really necessarily always look at judgments like that. And we'd had this conversation a while back that if you're wanting to get better at something, just from a practical standpoint, you ask somebody that is better than you at that thing and ask them to take a look and make a judgment on you. And I mean, that's not necessarily something you always want to hear, but it's something that's going to make you better. So that
100%.
The Father's never going to. He's always putting us through things that are trying. That He wants us to achieve the greatness that He sees within us. Because He sees us from the finish line. So let's start seeing others from the finish line and trying, like you said, join in the struggle with them instead of struggling against them. I think that's some words of wisdom right there. Instead of trying to fix everything, let's just join the struggle and go. Because I fall into that. Well, I can fix it with A, B, and C. Let's just do it that way. But that's not always proper.
I know Mr. Ryan is super competitive. I know that Chris is super competitive. And I know that Mr. Gillespie is absolutely hyper competitive. So when we didn't get that way overnight, okay? And none of us were any good at what we did by not taking constructive criticism, okay? I remember one specific time playing football. For some reason, as a wide receiver, I could not get that catch that would come over my shoulder. When I'm running down the field, it's like I had to turn my shoulder. And I could not catch that ball without turning my shoulder. And I had this coach, his name was Coach Etheridge. Boy, he would hammer me every time. You better not turn that shoulder again. I mean, he'd just be dogging me because I kept turning that shoulder rather than just trusting that ball was going to be there and putting my hand out and catching it. And I mean, it took him pounding it in my head time and time again and threatening to take me off of the field before I really realized just to trust the process. It took that constructive criticism and watching another kid that couldn't play half as good as I could go out there and do something that I couldn't do. That was the crazy thing. But that's that drive, that competitiveness that coach saw in me. He knew if he put that kid out there who could do it, that absolutely wasn't half as fast as I was or had an eye for the game like I did, and told me he was going to put him on the field instead of me, I probably would have never learned how to not turn my shoulder. Okay. And when we are giving each other as men constructive criticism, we don't need to think of that as a bad thing. We need to think of that as a good thing. Okay. That's the same thing that Chris is talking about here when he talks about accepting the judgment of God. Okay. His judgment is the blessing. That if we need to understand that. We think of it as a bad thing because we've been taught, oh, it's judgment. Judgment is the blessing because judgment brings correction. Correction makes you into a better person. Okay? So anything that makes you into a better person or a better servant of God, how can that be looked at as a negative thing? It can only be looked at as a blessing. We just need to train our minds differently when those things are happening to us. Because if we can continually change our mind and accept the judgments of God, because when we reject the judgments of God, then we are committing sin. We're being disobedient because it says, blessed are those who keep his commandments and do his judgments. And that's not just doing his judgments when they're being poured out on somebody else. That's doing his judgments when they're being poured out upon us as well. So meaning that we have to accept the judgment of Elohim when he does bring judgment into our life. I'm sure that there's been times in Ryan's life and Chris's life, both, that we went through some stuff and we were screaming, oh me and oh my, Father, get me out of this and get me out of this now. I've had those times and they're not easy. One specific time just popped into my head, and I never ever in my whole life want to be made to feel like that ever again. Ever. It was so terrible. Just the absolute hopeless feeling of nothingness. I mean, a panic attack multiplied bazillion. That's I never want to be in that place again. And luckily, Scripture says he'll not put more on us than we could bear. And he absolutely sent me deliverance in that situation. Don't need to know the situation. You just need to know that it was a situation. And all of us have probably been in those situations in our life. But when we accept that judgment and we learn from it, that's the key process, is to learn when the Father brings those things into our life. Because if we don't learn, we're going to do it again. And we're going to repeat that same judgment again. So, David Hooven says, couldn't the judgment be a curse as well if we're not doing what we're supposed to be? Of course. I mean, that's normally why the judgment comes into our life. It's a curse that we're placing upon our own life through our disobedience. We have to remember that Scripture says that disobedience is as the sin of witchcraft. So if we're being disobedient to our parents, then we are working witchcraft against our parents. Okay, but if we're being disobedient to Elohim, it is as though we are actually citing spells and incantations against Elohim. So when we belong to him and we are doing evil towards him, that's a terrible thing. I had a conversation with some people today about, a woman standing in public and openly accusing her husband of things that he's repented for. Okay, once a sin has been repented of, that sin's done away with. I don't want the Father to bring up my past sins. I definitely don't want my wife exposing me openly in the street. And if I ever do that to her, Yahweh forbid. I mean, we are supposed to be guarding and protecting our spouses around us. We're supposed to be loving them up. So when I see people do that to their spouse, it actually creates a physical reaction in me. I physically get sick to my stomach. I mean, I really want to throw up. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating that. When I see a woman publicly shame her husband, it makes me want to throw up. It literally does. It's not the way the Father designed this thing to be. And I don't know if that's because he's not doing his job or she's not doing hers. But somewhere some submission is failing. He's not being submitted to the Father, or she's not being submitted to him. I don't know where it's failing, but that is a physical reaction. So how much more so does the Father do we become a stink in his nostrils when we do this? When we who have been bought with such a high price take him into the public and put him into an open shame. Yeah. We better be very careful. One day we are going to stand in the hands of a true holy Elohim, and he's going to give us a very righteous judgment. When I think of all of the times in my life that I have failed him openly, and brought his name to reproach because of my wickedness. It's humbling. It's absolutely humbling. I tell people you can't really be a good preacher if you haven't been a good sinner, because you don't understand. I mean, you don't understand the price that was paid. You can't fully understand it until you realize what high price was paid for your life. And I tell people all the time, if you knew where the Father reached down and grabbed me from, he can find anybody. He can find anybody. If he found me, he'll find anybody. So know that, and that's our saving hope, and that's the grace that we have with him, and that's the grace that we need to extend our wives, maybe when they're struggling a little bit with this submission thing, because it's not easy. I tell people I am so unbelievably blessed to have found Floridel. Okay, I'm just telling you, she doesn't come from this culture. She wasn't inundated with this Western mentality, and I know it seems like I'm bragging on her all the time, and I am, because she deserves it. She deserves the praise. That's just the honest truth of it. And in fact, I'm just gonna say, every woman that I know that is close to us in this movement, they are worthy of praise in their own ways. They may be struggling in a million other ways, but they got this one special thing that they do that no other woman in this movement can do. They got a way of speaking into somebody's life. They got this little touch that they're touching these other women's lives with and helping them grow into better wives. And the men that are gathered around us are so amazing that they're holding us accountable, and we're holding each other accountable. It's just this amazing environment that the Father is building right now. And that's why I know we're transitioning now to the political arena of this talk, but it's like I can see this messianic age coming into view. I don't know if you guys can see that. Are you starting to get that little glimpse of the messianic age as we're transitioning out of the age of the rule of Satan into the rule of Elohim?
Yeah, I can see it. It seems like the final push of the enemy, as the family unit breaks down right before it's just going to resurrect, so to speak, and everybody's going to be in the place that they need to be. Because like you said, I mean, our women are worthy to be praised, my wife included.
100%.
All three of our wives. And like you said, it's a struggle today. I mean, you talk about Floridel not coming from this culture, and we're not making excuses, but, the culture that you're raised in has a lasting impact. And
100%.
I mean, when you're born into it, it's hard. And hats off to all of our women who have struggled against this movement, and this movement against the family being centered around the woman, with the father being the head, and just a biblical modeled family that we're all struggling to exhibit. And I think that overall, with the families that we're in contact with, that we're all in this fight, and there's no victory without the struggle. And let's just continue. And like I said, the women are worthy to be praised, because man, they've got a heck of a job, let me tell you. Like you said, I mean, we're out working 8 or 16 or 20 hours a day. I mean, they're at home taking care of the family, taking care of us when we're not there, lifting us up in prayer. I mean, their job's never done. We may be out 8 to 16 hours a day, but they've got 24/7.
100%.
I mean, do they even sleep? I mean, really.
I will tell you, those who don't know, Miss Robin Jones, Chris's wife, she does a bunch of holistic stuff. Is just amazing. This Fifth Sabbath, she took us all out on a foraging thing. Look at my arm, though. I want a refund. She,
Hey,
she,
we went right to the chigger patch, man. I think I had about 250. So I don't want to hear about your poison ivy. I'd trade your poison ivy for the chiggers.
but I strayed off the path, Miss Robin. I wasn't following directions, and I get what I deserved. So she was absolutely amazing, teaching us about foraging techniques, and she's wonderful in that. She is an awesome mother, taking care of 9 children, homeschooling them, and every one of them super intelligent and super prepared to face life. Miss Koska, oh my goodness! I mean, dietary stuff, food stuff. I mean, taking care of these boys. She's got 2 grown men, 2 almost grown men, and a young boy about the same age as my son. Or actually, the same age as my son. I think they're a month apart, maybe. She's just doing a wonderful job with them and taking care of her family. And I mean, if you know this woman, everything about her is about loving her family and making sure that they succeed, and trying to keep them together to the best of her ability. Miss Floridel, I'm going to tell you guys, and this is not a negative thing about Miss Floridel, but Miss Floridel was raised in a culture where everything about their life is focused around the family. Okay, so say they never got inundated with this women's lib and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, their whole culture is centered around taking care of a family. So she didn't have to unlearn some of the things that our wives or maybe your wives had to struggle with. Okay. So your wives struggling with that and getting past that, oh my goodness, how amazing are they? I mean, we have Miss Mahala and Miss Lenore in the room, and Miss Hooven in the room. I mean, all of these women, I could sit here and go on for hours and hours and hours. I brag about Miss Mahala all the time. She's the women's pastor here at Bet Hallel. Her uncanny ability to allow somebody to believe whatever it is that they believe. You don't find that in most women. She will tell you what the Torah says, and she'll tell you the way she understands it. But if you disagree with her, she'll maybe one time try to make you see it a different perspective. But then if you want to continue to see it the way you want to see it, she's like, okay. And it's really not a thing. She doesn't pursue it any further. I mean, her uncanny ability to just let something go. That's amazing. I can't do that. That's hard to do. That's hard to do, just to let it go. Those things are amazing, and all of our women have these very specific talents, and the way that the Father chose them to be in this movement at this time. I mean, Miss Susie Davis and the wisdom that the Father has given her and that spiritual insight. Just craziness. Okay. If we could bottle this talent, men, oh my goodness, we would be billionaires. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I want to say that first and foremost, and I'm not just blowing smoke here. That's how I genuinely feel about all of our women. I mean, they're your wives, but there are women, and you don't believe us, you mess with one of them, see if you don't get the whole pack on you.
Yeah, better believe it.
But Ryan, a bunch of political stuff has been going on this last week or two. Oh my goodness, it's been making my head spin. I can't even keep up with it all. So you just lead us in on that, and we'll just pick up off of you and track where you're tracking.
Well, where are we at now? Number 3, third indictment on Trump.
Yeah.
They're just scared to death. They're trying to get something to stick on him. I'm afraid they've opened up a whole can of worms. I mean, when you indict somebody,
They
They
get
have a-
discovery.
they have a little thing called discovery, and they get to do and however many they want to do that. And so, kind of think that the old deep state set a trap there, and they just walked right in it, and it's not going to be pretty. But yeah, there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of things that are all coming in on top of each other, and we got the Trump indictment, we've got financial situation, we got BRICS nations meeting on the 22nd of this month, talking about a one world currency or a one BRICS country currency. So that's not going to bode well for our Federal Reserve note.
Nope.
And we got some storms coming.
That's talking about the currency thing, we've been looking at that pretty closely. And I think there's a little over 200 nations now that have signed on with the BRICS nations that are going to an asset-backed currency. Those who know, the U.S. currency is backed by fictitious ones and zeros. There's nothing backing them. And since 1977, we haven't had to back our currency with anything. And in this current state, I don't know if you heard, but yesterday our credit rating as the United States was downgraded. Okay, which means that now that we're in higher debt than we've ever been in our history, in the history of humanity, we've never been trillions of dollars in debt. And now we're going to be paying higher interest on that debt because our credit rating as a country was downgraded. If you don't see that they're trying to collapse this economy, I think you're blind, deaf, and dumb. That's exactly what's trying to happen. And that's just the currency. You talked about, Trump, his third indictment. I heard him say, almost smilingly say, bring it on. I need one more indictment and I'll be your president. That's basically what he said. Just indict me one more time and secure my presidency. Because that's what they're trying to do. And this fourth one, I think, really will solidify that. Every time they get an indictment on him, they think that this is it. And now he's going before these corrupt judges in these corrupt districts, and they're just trying. It's like, shotgunning and hoping that one BB hits the paper. That's all they need. They've got, I think, if you put all the indictments together, there's like 27 or something. If you put all three indictments together, 27 different charges that they could get one of them to stick. If they can get one of them to stick, then they can impose a prison sentence on him. And it would be crazy to have a president that was sitting in federal prison, wouldn't it? Because nothing in the Constitution says he can't be the president. so lock him up and still become the president. Boy, we would really be living in some interesting times. But first thing he did when he became president, he would, of course, pardon himself and get out of prison. That's the way that would work. This whole global scheme. We talk about white hats and black hats and QAnon and all this kind of stuff, and as I say all the time, whatever's going on is above my pay grade, but that doesn't mean I ain't trying to listen through the wall. I did the same thing when I was a soldier. I wanted to hear what was going on, so I'd sneak over to the CQ tent try to sit outside, and at that time I smoked. I'd sit outside the CQ tent and smoke me a cigarette nonchalantly and try to overhear what was going on inside there with the higher ups. That way I would have some inside intel. And that's the same thing I do with all this kind of stuff. But, you know, have we talked on Tense of Israel about the magical bag of cocaine floating around the White House? Have we talked about that at all? I know that me and Ryan talked about it personally, but I don't know.
I thought we touched on it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we may have, but that one's still sticking in my craw. You got a crackhead cocaine addict living in the White House, and you're wondering where the cocaine came from. I mean, come on. And it keeps getting moved. That's the crazy thing. And so he's still having access to that bag. He's going and getting him a hit, dragging it all over the White House, forgetting where he left it. The Secret Service finds it again and puts it up from him again. It's like a little kid trying to get in a cookie jar, and you keep hiding it from him. I mean, I watched this thing where he walks out on the balcony a couple weeks ago. I don't want to tell you about my past, but I had one, and I can identify a cokehead a mile away. And that dude was out there on the balcony skitzing. I mean, he was jonesing for a hit. So
man.
I mean, this is what's going on at our nation's capital, guys. I mean, well, if you believe that story, because some say that the Capitol hasn't been occupied since January the 3rd, 2020, and since they fenced it off. So, and that may be the truth. I know that very rarely do you ever even get a legitimate picture of the halls of Congress anymore. And did you hear that thing? I think it was yesterday or the day before, Ryan. Something was going on at the Capitol House, and there was a shooting or something. Do you know anything about that and what went on?
Yeah, they cleared the Capitol building out. There was a suspicion of a shooter, but yeah, they cleared the Capitol out. I don't know if they found him or not, but yeah, I don't know. Kind of suspect there.
Well, here's hope, crossing our fingers and hoping. Oh, did I say that out loud? I want something to happen. I mean, I'm tired of listening to all the back channels and all of this crazy stuff. I don't care, good or bad. You know, if it's time to rock and roll, let's lock and load and hit the road. I mean, that's where I'm at. If we're not going to do that, then let's do something else. But let's do something as far as a country. We cannot keep allowing this blatant corruption to be in our public eye. I mean, Donald Trump. I want to go back and visit this real quick, and we'll comment on this, and then we'll try to sign off for the night. Their main indictment of Donald Trump is the documents that they found at Mar-a-Lago. That's the only one that has any chance of success. These other ones, I mean, they're clearly First Amendment things, and they're just doing it to try to disparage his name. Okay, they may have a little teeth, which I don't believe that they do, but I'm not an attorney either. Okay, so let me qualify that. But it looks to me like the Mar-a-Lago document thing is the one that may have some teeth in it, if any of them do. I don't believe any of them really do. But that one may have a little teeth in it if they get the right judges and the right jury pool and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so Donald Trump is the president of the United States when he gains access to these documents. As the president of the United States, Donald Trump can basically wave his hand over any document and say this document is now unclassified. and poof, it's like a genie. It's magically unclassified. Okay, he, as the president of the United States, has that right and has that ability. So he had legitimate right to have these documents. I forget how many hundreds of boxes of documents that they took when they left the Oval Office, personal and non-personal. I don't care. When you're having literally almost everything that comes through the president's hands is classified. And when you have access to that amount of classified documents, there's no way some of that's not going to get stuck in places that maybe it shouldn't have been. Okay, so then you have the Presidential Records Act, that where they come in and they sort through all that stuff and they tell you what is classified and what is not classified, and they take that stuff back with them. Barack Obama did it. George Bush did it. I mean, we can go through every president who's ever left the White House. They had the same thing. They had those documents in their possession as well. Joe Biden has never been president until now. He had documents from when he was a senator, which is absolutely against the law. You cannot, as a senator, remove classified documents from a SCIF, a top secret SCIF. He had documents from when he was a vice president. As a vice president, he could not remove documents from a classified SCIF. Both of them are criminal offenses. He never had the right to remove those documents. And we're trying to hold Donald Trump accountable for documents that he had the ability and the right to declassify at any time, and not hold Joe Biden accountable for documents that he quite possibly didn't even legally have access to. If you can't see a double standard in that, one of the main principles, the founding principles of this country, is there is equal justice and equal protection under the law. If you can't see the hypocrisy in this, go find you another country, because you're too dumb to live in this one. I'm sorry to say it like that, but that's just the truth. If you cannot see the hypocrisy in that, you just need to go find somewhere else to live. Give this country back to the sane people. That's number one. Now we have Mike Pence, the Benedict Arnold of our time. Everybody's like, oh, Mike Pence, he's a good Christian, God-fearing man. This guy is the biggest weasel I ever seen. Did you see? I mean, did you see him on TV the other day? I thought I was looking at a totally different man. I thought Satan had popped up on the screen or something. He thought he had a chance to attack Trump, and he just looked like, I mean, like his eyes had even changed. For real. I'm not making that up. Go back and watch it. I mean, he was like, I got him, you know. And he makes this statement, Donald Trump asked me to violate the law. No, he didn't. Nobody ever asked him to violate the law. What he asked him to do was absolutely to do his constitutional duty. And because there were legitimate questions in certifying the election, that he put a hold on certifying the electoral votes for 10 days while we recount the election votes. If you don't remember Al Gore and George Bush Jr., I mean, how many days did that go on past the election? Okay, so Donald Trump wasn't asking him to do anything that was unconstitutional. So that is a flat out lie that he's trying to perpetrate on the American people, and then trying to do it in the name of God. I am a good, godly man. I had to do what was right by God and my country. You lying devil, get off my screen. Political stuff, it just gets me fired up. And then one more thing, and then there's that one more thing again. Now we got old DeSantis. Okay. Now here's the crazy thing is I really like DeSantis, and I will openly admit I was deceived about him. Now I wasn't deceived about Mike Pence. I always thought that guy was a weasel. He had beady eyes, and every time they would attack Trump, he would just slink off to the back of the room. I know that type. That's a weasel, and I knew it from the beginning. Okay, your buddy comes up. He draws in close to you when they're attacking you. The weasel, he'll sleep off to the back of the room, and that was Mike Pence, Donald Trump's whole presidency. Okay, so no deception there. I always knew who he was, but DeSantis, I don't know if they got to him or what. But I don't know if y'all heard this. Last week, he petitioned the RNC to make it impossible for anyone who is under federal indictment to secure the Republican nomination. Do you understand how big of a weasel move that is? So he knows Donald Trump is indicted. He knows that he's being beaten by 34 points in the polls by a person who has not been indicted once, not twice, but now 3 times, and he's still getting beat by 34 points in the polls. So he goes to the Republican National Committee and says, oh, please help me out here because I don't have a chance unless you make it impossible for him to secure the nomination. If you vote for this guy, you got a paper backside. I mean, come on. You are a weak-minded, weak individual if you could give your vote to that dude. I would vote for Joe Biden again before I'd vote for that traitor. and you know how bad I don't like Joe Biden. That's craziness, absolute craziness. And if we get too focused on it, we'll get wrapped up in that stuff, and it'll take our minds off of Yahweh. So I listened to a little bit of it because I do have 2 passions in my life, and one is, of course, Yahweh. That's number one, and then other than my family, politics. I love listening to that stuff and digging in. And when you see the evilness, I mean, just absolute evilness of what's going on in our government now, it's like they can't hide anything. If they are hiding stuff, oh my goodness! if the stuff we are seeing is just the surface stuff, we're in some bad trouble. I mean, we're in some bad trouble if we're just seeing the surface stuff. Or is this Yahweh fully exposing their evilness? I hope that that's what it is, and that's what I pray that it is. That he's absolutely exposing the uttermost corruptness, and we're not just, there's an old line that says, that white stuff that's on top of chicken poop, when it dries and you scratch it, it's still chicken poop. So that's what I see about politics. So
oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, you got 3 movies going at the same time, and Yahweh is just exposing them. This is just a movie to wake everybody up. Because if it wasn't orchestrated, we would be in a collapse right now. I feel like we would just be in a free for all collapse.
Well,
we'd be the stock markets would be bankrupt. There'd be riots. We'd be pitchforks and
shooting our neighbor for their cows.
Yeah, I mean, but no, you got basically 3 movies going on at the same time. They're all orchestrated, and I feel like Yahweh's right in the middle of it. Whether you agree with me or not, I don't really care, but it's orchestrated.
Well, if they disagree with you, they disagree with the Bible, because it says that God is the one who establishes kingdoms and rulers, and He is the one that casts them down. Okay, so whether He is holding this kingdom up or He's casting it down, He is fully in control. So you're 100% right. The kingdoms of this world don't do anything without His approval. He is in full control. So
No. And you can't say, oh, well, Yahweh wouldn't allow masked actors, to play Congress, or He wouldn't allow masked actors to play a presidential candidate, or, He can do whatever He wants to, and He can use whoever He wants to in whatever capacity. You take Putin. Putin, to me, does not look like the same Putin 10 years ago.
nope.
And he doesn't act like the same Putin 10 years ago.
Nope. You talked about the.
Yeah, there's a lot of world leaders that don't look like what they did 10 years ago, and they don't act like they did 10 years ago.
Well, I don't know if people are watching this kind of stuff, but do some searches. Do searches on Bill and Melinda Gates, 10 years ago and what they look like now. Do searches on Kanye West from 6 years ago and what he looks like now. I mean, just when Trump was president until what he looks like now. I mean, it's two different dudes. I'm just going to tell you, that's just two different dudes. You can't. They're not even good lookalikes. They're just they're running a game somehow. I don't know what that purpose of that is. It's it's above my pay grade. But you mentioned the date there, the 22nd or the 27th. I forget what it was, but it's supposedly when the BRICS nations are going to come out and declare, basically they're done with the dollar. They're going to, all these countries are at once going to dump the dollar, which is going to collapse the dollar 100%. If you don't understand that, you need to go back to high school and take an economics class. If the rest of the world, if 200 nations or 100 and some nations dump the dollar in a day, that collapses the dollar. There's no way the dollar can sustain itself. Okay, you need to understand that. And if that does happen, I've been seeing stuff on the dark web. I know preachers aren't supposed to be on the dark web, but if that does happen, and these people who are on the dark web are right, at that same time, the EBS is going to go off. All of that Amber Alert stuff that you have on your phone, all of the EBS systems that are on your TVs, your computers, and every electronic device you have are going to start flashing. At that point, you're going to be instructed to go to your home. They're calling it the 3 days of darkness. So they are basically going to do a media blackout, and everything that has been going on in the backgrounds is supposed to be played on our televisions. And when we come out on the other side, we're going to have a whole different financial system, okay, that America is a part of and not in opposition to. So supposedly these actors have been acting in conjunction with these BRICS nations and solidifying the world's currency, and America will be the last one to identify that, well, basically we're the ones that started it from the get-go and got everybody else on board, but we've been secretly supporting it from back channels. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know if any of that's the truth. I'm just telling you that's the I tell people I had to find some new conspiracies because all my other ones came to pass. So yeah, I mean the old ones, they're not even conspiracies anymore. They're just absolute facts. Go read them in the news. So these are my new ones. And supposedly when these BRICS nations announce our EBS is going to go off, we're going to get 3 to 10 days is what I'm hearing of media blackout. All they're going to be playing is these tribunals of Guantanamo Bay, where they have been taking people like Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Obama and all these guys and trying them through these military tribunals for the last 2 years. And that's why basically a lot of these people say that Donald Trump is still our president. And what we're seeing right now is a show to mask what's going on in the background, because most Americans could not handle it, and especially the half that claims a D in front of their name could not handle what's going on right now, and it would have broke out in civil war. Which I get the reasoning and them trying to avoid a civil war. Here's the deal. At this point, I don't even care if we have a civil war. I never wanted a civil war, but we could have a civil war now because I'm tired of all this mess. So what we need, if this isn't the truth, we need a revolution. A civil war and a revolution are two totally different things. Okay, we need to take this country back to the principles of our founding fathers and set it right again. And I think that possibly will happen when we're transitioning into the Messianic age, which kind of led us into this segment of the Tents of Israel. So everybody that's still with us, you guys got anything to say on that?
Well, that's what we need to realize. We need this dollar to collapse. This is a Rothschild, Rockefeller, Federal Reserve dollar that has really nothing to do with the United States. Doesn't have anything to do with the people.
It's destroyed the nation.
We need to collapse it, get rid of it, and we need to print our own money from the restored republic and not from the Federal Reserve, because the United States does not own that money. We're having to use that money, but we don't own that money. That money owns us. And we
nobody owns that money except for the bank of elite families.
Yeah. I mean, that if you pull out a dollar bill, I mean, it's got Illuminati, devil worshiping stuff all over it.
Absolutely.
That needs to go away. And we need to stop the dominance and the control that it has. I mean, it's forced us into wars and forced us into, taking these other countries and just completely destroying other countries. I mean, it's a weapon. They've weaponized that dollar, and we've got to get away from that. That's not Yahweh. That's not what He designed. So all this restitution has to happen, while this plays out. So yeah, you're right. EBS 3 to 10 days. They're going to play disclosures, but then that's going to give the military. They're going to want everybody in their house. That's going to give the military time to go in and clean up Antifa, the gangs, all of these, hot spots in these big cities. It's going to give them time to go in and clean this stuff up. And that's what we got to have. And we got to support the guys. We got to stay out of the way, but we need to support them. But we got to know that's what's happening. So, I mean, I've heard we're days away from it, hours, days, who knows, but you can see the signs are there. So
yeah, I'm gonna say one more thing. I don't want people to. I've told Chris and Ryan this as well, but I'm not a Trump loyalist. Okay, I really respect what he did. I think the stuff that he did while he was in office was somebody who was trying to keep their word, whether that was part of the illusion or not. I've always said from the beginning, he can either be the greatest president we've ever had or the worst. I mean, he has the potential to be both. So I'm not trying to sit here and sing the praises of Donald Trump. Right now, with everybody who is on the political stage, I'll stand on his side, though. I mean, that's honestly where I'm at. I don't like the arrogance. I don't like the crude comments. I don't like that kind of stuff. Some people say that that's all part of the show, and it very well may be. I mean, sensationalist is what puts butts in the seats, is what they say. So maybe that's what he's doing with all that kind of stuff. I know that it turns me off personally to him. But in looking at the political stage today, I honestly, I can't find you 5 guys that I would stand behind. But if I did, I think Trump would have to be in that stack. Okay, that I think are at least trying to do what they say they believe. And as the old saying goes, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. That's the truth too. So, you got anything, Chris?
No, I agree with that statement.
All right. So we love you guys. Thanks for joining us on Intensive Israel. Sorry it took us a couple weeks to get here. We love you, but not as much as Yahweh does. Remember, wives, submit yourself to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives as the Messiah loved the church. That's the real message tonight. I mean, all this scary stuff, political and all that kind of stuff, Yahweh's going to do what he does with all that stuff. And it's good for us to talk about, get wound up about, and think about, and be aware of, because like the Holocaust, we need to know if it's time to go, we got to go. I mean, when Yahweh says it's time to go, let's just go. And if we're not informed, we may miss that. So let's be aware of what's going on politically as well as spiritually. That's kind of why we do what we do on the Tents of Israel. We don't want to get so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good, if that makes sense. So we've seen a lot of people over the years do that they just disconnect from society and just keep their heads up in the cloud, and then the storm comes and takes them away. And we don't want to see that happening to the people who watch us here. So we love you, but not as much as Yahweh does. We're going to hit this outroll and get out of here. We'll see you next time on the Tents of Israel. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, covenant keepers and children of Israel. You're listening to Awaken to Torah Ministries, where spirit and truth converge. We are a listener-supported ministry and ask that you prayerfully consider supporting this work. This ministry is focused on revealing the message of Torah as taught by our Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. Your donation will be used to further a ministry devoted to exposing the lies that we have inherited from our forefathers, as Jeremiah 16:19 clearly declares. You can contact us at 77690 South 4680 Road, Stillwell, Oklahoma 74960, or join our mailing list at awakentotorah@gmail.com. We look forward to meeting you when we once again are sheltered by a cloud by day and a fire by night, on our way to Jerusalem. Shalom Aleichem, and we'll see you there.